Yeah,
So
we have so many wonderful Pride events. I guess I'll sort of get us started. I'm sure we'll have people join as we go. We welcome you if you are joining us from Facebook. Welcome if you are joining us on our Zoom. We welcome you. I'm Rabbi Lindy Resnick of Congregation Emmanuel. I was once the rabbinic intern at BCC, and I welcome all of our Beth Chaim Chadashim family that is here with us tonight as well. And we are honored to be able to feature your favorite rabbi and mine, Rabbi Lisa Edwards, tonight, who we are going to do some learning with. And before we learn along with Rabbi Edwards, I wanted to offer a blessing and do a quick show and tell about a few pieces of literature. The blessing that I'm going to share is from Where Pride Dwells, which just came out from the CCAR Press. Rabbi Denise Egger helped put it together, but our own Rabbi Lisa Edwards and many, many more voices are found within this incredible anthology of blessings for our queer community. So I begin tonight with a blessing for pride. Makor HaChaim, source of life, you have blessed each of us with your spirit. In your wisdom, you have made each of us a unique treasure. Mayan Chayenu, wellspring of our lives, cause us to flow with courage, strength, and compassion, to live our stories openly and proudly and joyfully. Shekhinah shel ahava, presence of love, you embrace us with your love. May we embrace ourselves, our partners, our lovers, our friends, our children, our dear ones with the power of your ahava rabbah, your unending, boundless love. Ruach HaShalom, spirit of peace and wholeness. Open our eyes to the gifts and blessings we offer and receive from each other. Open our hearts to welcome each other fully and truly. Open our hands to embrace, to support, to lift each other up. Begila, berina, uvereut, with joy, with song, and with deep friendship. Today, as we celebrate renewal, pride, and community, let us walk together with strength, compassion, and love. Nevarech et mayan chayenu asher tikadesh utsameach otanu. We bless you, wellspring of life, of lives. May you fill us with joy and sanctity. And we say together, Amen.
Amen.
This beautiful blessing was written by Rabbi Joshua Zlotschauer and Rabbi Erica Steelman and Dr. Gloria Becker. So we thank them for these beautiful words. And this is the book. You can get it on CCAR Press. A few other things just for you to know about. A Rainbow Thread, which is an amazing anthology that came out, I don't know, Rabbi Edwards, I'm sure it came out a few years ago. I want to say maybe a year ago, 2019. And it is by Noam Sienna. It's a great anthology that basically is an anthology of Jewish queer texts from the first century to 1969. So as many of you know, we've been around for a long time, and there's proof of it. And then this book as well, Torah Queries, which I believe, Rabbi Edwards, you're also featured in this as well, by Joshua Lesser and David Schneer, with a foreword also by Judith Plaskow, is a great one to have on your queer Jewish bookshelf. There's so many more. These are just a few. But for those of you who are joining us who maybe haven't built that library yet, go ahead and get those. And I welcome Rabbi Lisa Edwards. It is always a pleasure. You are no stranger to our community. Grateful for that. And I will ask our temple president to share for those of our community who don't know you a little bit about you before we learn. Stuart?
Thank you, Rabbi Resnick. I would like to say first that it is one of the genuine pleasures of my life to host an event like this, to know that there are people who feel free and comfortable to be who they are, when they are, where they are, just warms my heart. That said, everybody's journey is different, and so I feel like I must mention that we are going out to Facebook Live, and this will be available on YouTube. And if your particular journey hasn't led you to a point yet where you're comfortable with your voice or your name or your picture being shown, please feel free to mute your video, to change your name, whatever makes you feel comfortable. That said, Rabbi Lisa Edwards has taught at Emanu twice, when she joined us for Rabbi Resnick's installation and at Clara's bat mitzvah service last year. Last summer, Lisa Edwards became Rabbi Emerita at Beth Chaim Chadashim in Los Angeles, where she served as rabbi for 25 years. BCC, the House of New Life, is a URJ congregation. Founded in 1972, the first synagogue created by and for gay and lesbian Jews, BCC became a member congregation of the Reform movement in 1974, the first such congregation of any religion to be welcomed into a mainstream religious organization. Rabbi Resnick served as student rabbi at BCC, and she and Janelle were members of BCC before coming here to Redlands. Rabbi Edwards has been a Jewish lesbian activist from the pulpit, on the page, on the web, in the classroom, on Zoom, and in the streets of Los Angeles. She has witnessed and works to counteract the damage done to LGBTQ+ individuals when discrimination is preached by religious authorities and practiced by families and community of faith. And having said all that, I introduce to you Rabbi Lisa Edwards.
Thank you so much. Lovely to be back again with the Emanu group and to see so many friends from BCC too joining on, and from far and near. Lee Wygand, it's wonderful to see you. So glad that you could join us. We miss you. Lee moved closer to Emanu, I think, but they used to be near us. So I also want to offer a prayer today, just given where we are in the country right now and in the world right now and all that we've been experiencing. I want to offer a prayer for our country that was actually written several years ago by my colleague and teacher and friend, Rabbi Margaret Morris-Wenig. And it's in another book that could be on your shelf, the Siddur from our sibling congregation in New York City, CBST. So wonderful prayer book. Rabbi Wenig's prayer for the country. May citizens of all ages, races, and creeds appreciate what a privilege it is to vote and never fail to exercise that right. May lively debate flourish among us, and yet may we transcend differences to banish hatred and bigotry and to protect the ideals and free institutions that are our country's greatest source of strength. May our nation consume no more than our fair share of the world's resources and produce no more than our fair share of the world's pollutants. May this country become a model for justice and peace throughout the world. And may each of us play a redemptive role in that. And let us say, and also those of you who study with me often, or used to study with me often when I used to study with you, let's say a prayer for study. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Blessed are you, God, who invites us, encourages us, commands us to soak ourselves in words of Torah. So I wanted to also take into account where we are in the world right now. Remembering that just this past Friday, the Trump administration announced that it was going to try to eliminate the regulation in healthcare to prohibit discrimination to transgender people. That may be turned around by the Supreme Court ruling yesterday, which in a 6-3 decision on the Supreme Court now includes LGBTQ people in Title VII, making it illegal to terminate employment because someone is LGBTQ. So that was good news. Here we are in June. It was no coincidence that the Supreme Court has offered in June several of its rulings, I think all of its rulings that directly affect LGBT people or specifically affect them. So coming up on June 26th as the anniversary of the Supreme Court announcement of their ruling in both 2013 and 2015 about marriage and allowing the legalization of marriage equality throughout the land in 2015. So those are good things to sort of frame what I want to do with us today, as is just the fact, just imagining, not easy, it's not hard to imagine what we've all been doing these many months, isolating ourselves and then suddenly coming out into the streets to protest some of the things that we're seeing in the country today and in the world. The Torah portion this week is Shalach Lecha, in the early third of the book of Numbers, and one of the most important Torah portions in the Torah. And I want to use it as a frame to look at a few other texts from various parts of the Bible as I try to answer the question that I posed in my title. Are there LGBTQ plus people in the Bible? This week is also the yahrzeit of my father, blessed memory, Herman Edwards, who, let's see, what year? Tracy, 1997, died on Shabbat Shalach Lecha. So I'm always tuned in to this Torah portion in particular. And I want to start by sharing, I'm going to share a lot of text with us. We may or may not read all of them. So give me a moment here while I try to get these texts up on screen. Can you all see that? Yeah, somebody nod their heads or, yeah, okay, good. So I want to look at some of, even though I have more verses up here from the Torah portion than from any other passages that I want to look at, I want to read through it really quickly. If people want to study more from this Torah portion, at 7:15 tonight, our friend Maggie Parkhurst, Maggie Anton Parkhurst is going to be doing a BCC Torah study on Zoom. But I want to use these passages that I've selected for us to think about the other passages that we're going to look at today. So as we read these Torah portions, I want to ask you, I'll ask you a few questions along the way. And given the time, I think I'm going to try to read through and talk about the texts all together, and then at the end we can all comment individually on them. That's all right with you. So looking first, this is the very beginning of this Torah portion. God said to Moses, spoke to Moses, saying, "Send men to scout the land of Canaan, which I am giving to the Israelite people. Send one man from each of their ancestral tribes, each one a chieftain among them." So Moses, by God's command, sent them out from the wilderness of Paran, all the men being leaders of the Israelites. So you've got 12 men going out, each one a leader in their own tribe of the 12 tribes. And God says simply, send them to scout the land that I'm giving you. Okay? A few verses later, Moses gives them their assignment. And notice how Moses adds to what God recommended. God said, tell them to go look at the land. Moses says, when Moses sent them to scout the land of Canaan, Moses says to them, go up there into the Negev and onto the hill country and see what kind of country it is. Are the people who dwell in it strong or weak, few or many? Is the country in which they dwell good or bad? Are the towns they live in open or fortified? Is the soil rich or poor? Is it wooded or not? And take pains to bring back some of the fruit of the land. Now, it happened to be the season of the first ripe grapes. They went up and scouted the land from the wilderness of Zin to Rehob. They went up into the Negev and came to Hebron, where lived all these people. I'm not going to mention them all. They reached the Wadi of Eshcol, and there they cut down a branch with a single cluster of grapes that was so big it had to be borne on a carrying frame by 2 of them, and some pomegranates and some figs. I'm just going to offer one more share for a moment. This is the various versions of Israel's Ministry of Tourism logo. It's been in existence for many years. It's kind of gotten modernized. It's kind of got rainbows on it now. But this is a picture of what I just read to us. The grapes so big that it took 2 men to carry them. You can see that the country of Israel is very proud of what they can produce, what they can grow there. I'm going to go back to the other text. Okay, are you all seeing now the Bible text again? Yeah, okay. At the end of 40 days, so remember that number 40, they went straight to Moses and Aaron, the whole Israelite community, and they made their report to them, to the whole community, as they showed them these grapes and the figs and the pomegranates. They said, we came to the land that you sent us to, and it does indeed flow with milk and honey, and this is its fruit. However, the people who inhabit the country are powerful, and the cities are fortified and very large. Moreover, we saw the Anakites there. Amalekites dwell in the Negev. Or all these different people they list. And Caleb, oh wait, something happened to my text. Uh-oh. Is there a line missing? No. Okay, so he told them all that. Caleb hushed the people before Moses and said, let us by all means, oh, that's right. Caleb, one of the 12 scouts, said, let us by all means go up, and we shall gain possession of it, for we shall surely overcome it. But the men who had gone up with him said, we cannot attack that people. It is stronger than we. Thus they spread calumnies among the Israelites about the land they had scouted, saying, the country that we traversed and scouted is one that devours its settlers. All the people that we saw in it are men of great size. We saw the Nephilim there. The Anakites are part of the Nephilim, and we looked like grasshoppers to ourselves, and so we must have looked to them. One of my favorite lines in Torah. We looked like grasshoppers to ourselves, and so we must have looked to them. And when the Israelites hear this, from this report back, that one of the scouts is saying, yeah, let's go up there, and others are saying, uh-oh, trouble ahead. the whole community broke into loud cries, and the people wept that night. And they started railing against Moses and Aaron, if only we had died in the land of Egypt. They're very distressed here. And now in verse 6, here's my cursor, I don't know if you could see that. Joshua, the son of Nun, and Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, of those who had rent their clothes, they exhorted everyone. They said, the land we traversed and scouted is an exceedingly good land. Have no fear. God is with us. People didn't listen. They were still upset. And God got upset with them. And does anybody remember what God's treatment of them were when God found out that they had been so disbelieving, so frightened, so wishing they had they could go back to Egypt? Cantor Byrne Vogel, did you wanna say something? No. God's response is, you're all gonna be condemned to wander for 40 years in the wilderness. And those of you of so little faith, those of you who came out of Egypt, you're all gonna die in this wilderness. So next chapter, God says, in this very wilderness shall your carcasses drop of all of you who came up out of Egypt, except for Caleb and Joshua, these two scouts who said, hey, everybody, it's great over there. We're going to be just fine. Don't worry about it. Everybody else is going to die in the wilderness. Your children will live. Your children will survive to go into the land that I'm giving you. But all of you, to the last person, will die in the wilderness. So how many of you remember as we go through Torah, as we go through the book of Exodus, we all know the Israelites wandered for 40 years in the wilderness. But how many of you remember that it's this year and a little bit into the wandering before God even comes up with an idea to make us stay in the wilderness for so long? And it's because of this moment in time when the people believed the lies that were being spread about the land by these 10 scouts, leaders of tribes of Israel, who spread lies about the land. And those 10 scouts, those pessimistic scouts, those ones who caused alarm among all the Israelites, they died right then. God killed them right then. Of those men who had gone to scout the land, only Joshua and Caleb survived. Kind of a dramatic story here in the book of Numbers, and really important in the history of our people. Right? So I'm going to go now to some texts, some different texts, quite different texts from Torah and other parts of the Bible. But I want you to think about, I want to invite you to be Caleb and Joshua as we go to these texts. I want to invite you to be the optimistic scouts, the ones who saw maybe there were problems ahead, but had faith that God was with them. Also, the ones who saw what everybody else saw, but interpreted it, understood it so differently, understood it with completely different vision and understanding. And I also want to invite you to look at it maybe as a grasshopper. If you're somebody who feels small often in the world, in events that you encounter, among people that you encounter, what does it mean to look like a grasshopper or feel like a grasshopper? A few years ago, Rabbi Reuven Zellman, actually when Reuven was just about to begin rabbinical school, was the first transgender student at Hebrew Union College, came to BCC to speak, and this was the Torah portion he was speaking about. And And he gave us a whole lecture about the power of grasshoppers, and especially when grasshoppers get together, what they can do and the power they can wield. And I think it's stuck in the mind of every one of us who heard it all this time. What does it mean to be a grasshopper? Depends on how you look at it, right? What does it mean to feel like a grasshopper? Depends on what kind of grasshopper you are and what your grasshopper attitude is. So, so with that frame, I want to look at just a few passages of the Bible and a few characters and see if we can see some LGBTQ characters in these texts that we have read over and over again, that have been the Bible, sacred texts of our people all these many years, generations and generations. So the next text that's on the screen is from the book of Genesis. God created man, and in the Hebrew it's Ha-Adam, Adam, the Adam, created man in God's image. In the image of God, God created him, male and female. God created them. This is a verse that is stunning in its ambiguity and its possibilities. We've got this translation allows us to see the a pretty literal translation. God created Ha-Adam, the human. I've also seen, because the root of the word Adam also means earth. I've seen it translated as God created the earthling in God's image. In the image of God, B'Tselem Elohim, that's a phrase that many of us have heard, in the image of God. And it says, God created it, or him, singular, third person. And then it says, Zakar unikeva, male and female, God created them, all in one verse, packed in here. So what does it mean? We're not the only ones, or the newest, we're just the newest ones to wonder about this verse. In Bereshit Rabbah, which is a document that was filled with midrash and commentary about the Torah, dates back to at least 500 CE, Common Era. As long ago as that, they were discussing this very verse. And look at what Rabbi Yirmiyah ben Elazar says about it on the right. In the hour when the Holy One created the first human, God created him as an androgyne, as androgynos, as it is said, male and female. God created them. I love this. 500 Common Era. Already we have established this concept of an androgynous person. They borrowed in the Hebrew, they borrowed from the Greek for androgynous. Here's their androgynous person. And who is this androgynous person? The very first human being God created may have been androgynous. In the Talmud, so the Talmud was written down around 600 BCE. I mean, sorry, Common Era, not BCE, after, in the Common Era. They give a definition of what androgynous means in the English. So I just bring this up for two different terms that we're going to look at. The sages taught the verse, a verse that refers to man. The word for man there is ish, says ish, ish. And why does it repeat ish twice? Man, man. Why does it say man, man? Because it's including everybody. And when it's including everybody, who is it including? Not only a son, but also a daughter. So not only a man, but also a woman, and also one whose sexual organs are indeterminate. And they have a word for that in the Talmud, tumtum. T-U-M, T-U-M is how we spell it in transliteration, tumtum. One whose sexual organs are indeterminate. And also a hermaphrodite, or that androgynous person. The same word used, borrowed from the Greek, androgynous. So not only do they, in the Talmud, conceive of the idea, or probably have encountered people who have indeterminate sexual organs, they also encounter people who are themselves androgynous. You can't tell whether they're a man or a woman. There's some combination of both. Not only do they have these things, but look, I mean, I only gave you an excerpt, but they don't go on to negate these people in any way or criticize them or in any way. In fact, they're saying God's including them all. God's including men and women and tumtums and androgynous. It's not such a binary world in the Talmud as we might have thought it might be. So we have these possibilities of transgender people, of queer people already very early on in the very first story that we read about in the Torah. Now I'm moving to Genesis chapter 11 and chapter 18, where we get a little discussion of Abraham and Sarah. Abraham and Sarah, the parents of the Jewish people, right? Our mother, Sarah Emanu, our mother, Avraham Avinu, our father. Now Sarah was barren. She had no child. So this is before Isaac is born, and you might remember the stories in Genesis of before Isaac was born. Sarah was 90 years old when Isaac was born, so that's a lot of years of not having any children, of being barren. Akara is what the Hebrew says. And when God comes to say that, to tell Abraham and Sarah that they're going to have a child together, that they're going to have Isaac, that's chapter 18, verse 11 to 14 I have here on the screen. Now, Abraham and Sarah were old. Abraham was 99 when God told them this. Sarah was almost 90. They were advanced in years. Sarah had stopped having the periods of women. And Sarah laughed to herself upon hearing, "Now that I am withered, am I to have enjoyment of my husband so old?" Just an aside, the Hebrew word for enjoyment there is edna, which comes from the same root as Eden, the Garden of Eden. And it also means moisture. Am I to have moisture again with my husband so old? There's a joke that comes out of that, but I'll save that for another time. And then God said to Abraham, "Why did Sarah laugh? Is anything too wondrous for me, for God?" Why did Sarah laugh when I said, when she said, "Shall I bear a child, old as I am?" And God promises, "I will return to you at the same season next year, and Sarah will have a son." So I bring these two short passages to you because I want to show you yet another old text of a collection of midrash, of commentary and stories based on the Torah. And this one is from a collection called Ein Yaakov, which was published in the 1500s. But it's a collection that has many commentaries that are much older than the 1800s. Than the 1500s. And here's one. Rabbi Ami said, Abraham and Sarah were tumtumim. So remember our word tumtum, that people of indeterminate sex? Abraham and Sarah were tumtum, says Rabbi Ami, without any problem at all. He says, and he gives this little quotation from the book of Isaiah. And in that book of Isaiah, it says, look unto the rock whence you were hewn, and to the hole of the pit whence you were dug out. And it's immediately followed by a verse about Abraham and Sarah. So Rabbi Nachman, who's in conversation here with Rabbi Ami, says, our mother Sarah was wombless. Sarah was barren. She had no child. So all this conversation about Sarah being barren leads Rabbi Ami to just say kind of blithely, in passing, oh yeah, Sarah and Abraham, while we're at it, were tumtums. They were of indeterminate sex, trying to explain how it could be that it wasn't until so late in their lives that they had children. So now we've got queer people three from the book of Genesis, right? The first human and the first Jews all say some of these rabbis of old that they were tumtum, that they were androgynous, that they were unusual. So now I'm going to look at two more stories that you might be more familiar with when speaking in a context of questioning whether there are lesbian and gay people or bisexual people in the Bible. And these are the stories of Jonathan and David, and the story of Ruth and Naomi. So both of these come from later parts of the Bible. The Jonathan and David story is in the books of the prophets in 1st and 2nd Samuel. So I've put on here just a few passages. There are quite a few scattered throughout the book of 1st Samuel and book of 2nd Samuel about the relationship between David and Jonathan. When David finished speaking with Saul, Jonathan's soul became bound up with the soul of David. So this is David who becomes King David, and who, before he becomes King David, it's also David, who slew Goliath with his slingshot, the giant Goliath. But David will eventually become king over all Israel. Saul is the current king over Israel and first king over Israel. And Jonathan is the son of Saul, so who should become the next king, but doesn't. And when Jonathan first met David, these are the words that the Bible uses to describe how Jonathan felt about David. His soul became bound up with the soul, the nephesh of David. Jonathan loved David as he loved himself, like his own soul. And King Saul, took him into service that day and would not let him return to his father's house. That's talking about David. And Jonathan and David made a pact because Jonathan loved him as he loved his own soul. And they used the word love, that same word that's used, ahava, that's used about Isaac when he first meets Rebecca. It's the word we're told to love God, ahava, with our whole soul. Here's Jonathan loving David with his soul as he loves his own soul, as he loves himself. Later on, Jonathan, out of his love for David, adjured him again, for he loved him as himself. And now we discover that King Saul, Jonathan's father, is furious at David. We're not sure why. Is it because David seeks the throne? Is it because Saul's son, Jonathan, loves David? Perhaps it's because Saul himself loves David. Saul flew into a rage against his son, Jonathan. "You son of a perverse, rebellious woman," he shouted. "I know that you side with the son of Jesse," that's David, "to your shame and to the shame of your mother's nakedness. For as long as the son of Jesse lives on earth, neither you nor your kingship will be secure. Now then, have him brought to me, for he is marked for death." But Jonathan spoke up and said to his father, "Why should he be put to death? What has he done?" And at that, Saul threw his spear at his own son, Jonathan, to strike him down. And Jonathan realized that his father was determined to do away with David. So, question for you all to think about, and maybe we'll have time to talk about. Why is Saul so upset about David and so upset about the way his son Jonathan feels about David? Then this passage, Jonathan actually saves David's life. Saul was going to kill him, and he saves David's life. And this is from the story of how he saves David's life. And when he does this, he warns him not to come back because Saul's going to kill him. And I'm looking now at verse 41 here, where David and Jonathan come together after being separated for some time, and they kissed each other and wept together. And David wept the longer. That's how we often see it translated. David wept more. The Hebrew actually says that David higdil, that David grew big. There's an ambiguous term for us from the Bible. Don't know what it means for sure. People have commentaries exist on this, but most often we just say David wept more than Jonathan did, but David grew big. And Jonathan said to David, "Go in peace. I'm sending you away in order to save your life, for we two have sworn to each other in the name of God. May God be witness between you and me, between your offspring and mine forever." That's a verse that people have used in weddings. It's such a beautiful verse. May God be witness between you and me. We have sworn to each other. Our souls are bound to one another. When Jonathan dies a premature death, as does Saul, David gives a eulogy for them. And in David's eulogy, it's in the book of 2 Samuel, in the first chapter. David says, "My brother Jonathan, I grieve for you. You were most dear to me. Your love was wonderful to me, more than the love of women." Beautiful passage, isn't it? And, you know, here's David, who we know married more than once, was married to more than one woman, knew the love of women, at least lusted over women if he didn't also love women. But when it comes to his relationship with Jonathan, Jonathan's love was more to me than the love of women. So, viewing with the eyes of those optimistic scouts, can we view David and Jonathan as in love with each other, as a gay couple, or as at least people who were in love in the Bible? And to add ammunition to that theory, now I don't want to use the word ammunition, that's too violent. A little gift to that theory. In Pirkei Avot, which is also in the Mishnah and the Talmud, a passage that many people have studied, verses that many people have studied, Pirkei Avot, the sayings of our teachers, of our fathers, of our parents. Here's a passage that says, "All love that depends on something, when that thing ceases, the love ceases. But all love that does not depend on a thing will never cease. Give me an example. What is an example of love that depended on something? This was the love of Amnon for Tamar. You might remember in the story of Amnon and Tamar. Amnon lusts after his sister Tamar and ends up raping her, and then is disgusted by her, doesn't want to be with her. That's a love that ends, that's not based on love. And what is an example of love that does not depend on anything? Such was the love of David and Jonathan. That's the love, says Pirkei Avot, that is enduring. And that's the example they come up with. Of all the examples they could come up with, that's the example of enduring love, the love between David and Jonathan. And Rabbi Yonah, commenting on this in what year? In the 1200s, Rabbi Yonah comments on this and says about the example of David and Jonathan. Even though Jonathan was fit to rise in the place of his father, and David was going to remove him from the monarchy, nonetheless, Jonathan loved him with a firm attachment. And that is what King David, peace be unto him, said in his eulogy of Jonathan. Your love surpasses the love of women. This is to say, from where did I know this? Oh, sorry, I'm just going to skip down to the bottom, where he just is commenting still on this passage from Pirkei Avot. Jonathan did not become jealous, but just the opposite. He saved David from the hand of his father. And this is from the angle that he loved him. And it was not the love of the body, it was the love of his soul. So one more couple, one more love affair, one more love in the Bible that I'm going to offer to you is from the book of Ruth. So book of Ruth that we read at Shavuot. Book of Ruth, one of the most beautiful short stories I think ever written. It's only 4 chapters long. And it contains this passage of the scene between Ruth and Naomi. Naomi is Ruth's mother-in-law. Both of them have been widowed. And Ruth and Naomi, the mother-in-law, tells Ruth to go back to her family. We've been widowed. I'm going to go back to my people. You go back to your people. Go home. I have nothing to offer you. And instead of following Naomi's instruction, Ruth replies to her, do not urge me to leave you, to turn back and not follow you. For wherever you go, I will go. Wherever you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. Thus and more may God do to me if anything but death parts me from you. When Naomi saw how determined Ruth was to go with her, she ceased to argue with her. Beautiful passage. I didn't give you any old commentary about this because I just wanted to give you the commentary that this is a passage that has been used in wedding ceremonies, Christian and Jewish and not religious also, for generations. These words that Ruth speaks to Naomi, where you go, I will go. Where you live, I will live. Your people will be my people, your God, my God. This is language that got translated and put into wedding ceremonies. Most often through the generations, when it's used in a wedding ceremony, the officiant forgets to tell people this was a woman speaking to another woman. When I use it in wedding ceremonies, when my wife Tracy and I used it in our wedding ceremony, we were sure to tell people. This is biblical language of a biblical woman speaking to another woman. These words of love. So those were the passages that I wanted to share with you today. And I want to invite you to just make comments for a few minutes if you'd like to. We have a few minutes left. I'm going to stop sharing. I'll go back if someone needs us to look at the text. But I thought I'd rather have you all look at one another. And if you want to, I think you can unmute yourself in the lower left corner of your screen. If you'd like to say something, just jump in.
Rabbi, I just want to tell you that I really miss seeing you, and seeing you tonight on this Zoom is a real honor. And I've talked to you before at the synagogue. You probably don't remember me. My name is Tim.
Hi, Tim.
It's great to see you. Thanks for being here, and I'm soaking it all in.
Good. Thank you. Other comments, other thoughts?
I also wanted to say it was wonderful to attend a service of yours. It's been a very long time, and I really appreciate it, and it was absolutely beautiful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lee. It was, you're not on screen now, but it was lovely to see you for a moment.
Yeah, I had to move around the house, so I took my screen down so you wouldn't get all dizzy and everything.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So are there any grasshoppers in the crowd? Tamra, you have to unmute yourself. Or shall I unmute you?
Rabbi, go ahead.
Thank you. First, thank you very much. This is just so wonderful. I don't think I didn't say yes because I'm a grasshopper. It was right before you asked the question that I turned, but I do really appreciate the difference between hearing everything that you're saying through the grasshopper mind and the non-grasshopper mind. I think that was fascinating. I never heard anything about the androgynous or the indeterminate. That was crazy to hear that.
Cool, right?
And then the thing, though, that I have to say is just such a big question mark was how we get big from wet. And I wondered if you could say a little bit more about that. I mean, I'm so curious about everything, but that one thing in particular.
Yeah, so this is what happened to David. I can't say very much about it. It's the Hebrew linguists that need to say more about it. But it is this many commentators have noted that that's just a very ambiguous phrase. It's not used. It doesn't seem to mean. It doesn't seem to reference weeping. So what does it mean? And so yeah, I can't say much more about it. Tracy. Thank you, Tamara, though, for those comments. And I was waving it. I was going to wave at Alyssa, who just left the screen. But Tracy, you wanted to say something.
Oh, just, that's a preponderance of evidence. It's just amazing, it's brought together like that, and the way it echoes between them and puts the people in the situations of making huge decisions and going against their parents or what they were supposed to do and insisting that they have their life, that they go forward with their life. And
yeah, so both Jonathan and Ruth do that, right? Yeah, yeah.
When you sweep it all together, that it just is very helpful. And, and also the things about people's bodies and the range of bodies that there are. And, that just is so validating.
Yes, the range of bodies, hi Alyssa, and the range of bodies and the just sort of the matter-of-fact way that the rabbis talk about it. it's like, it's so easy for them. And there are wonderful, much longer passages in the Talmud where they actually discuss Tumtum and androgynous and in much more depth. So those are also interesting passages to look at. They're not in the Bible though, so I didn't bring them into this conversation. Yeah, I love the matter-of-factness of it, right? There's not a criticism, it's not a fear of it, just this is what is. Just almost in passing comment about it. Any other thoughts people want to share?
Rabbi, I do. This is Tim.
Yeah.
So, this has been making me think. So, first, first I was thinking that, it just goes to show you, that love is stronger than rules, number one. But number two, what this did show me, Rabbi, what you taught me this evening was this, that heart to heart love is true and deep. Whatever skeleton or sex is covering that seems unimportant, really. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Beautiful, Tim. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Canterburn Vogel.
All I wanted to say, it was fabulous. Thank you so much for presenting all of these texts together. And all I'm thinking of is I wish that the fundamentalists could have a Bible study with these texts.
Cantor, I was thinking the same thing.
And just how they would,
I was thinking the same as well. And another thing I wanted to bring up is, aren't there 6 genders in Judaism?
Yeah, so that's all in that other passage of Talmud that I just alluded to. They've got lots of different categories for people.
And Native Americans, I think there are 3 genders, and there's so many cultures with, more than 2.
With great respect for and understanding of, in both cases. So,
I was wondering, Rabbi Edwards, how we could use this knowledge to help educate both our youth and perhaps create a little more tolerance for all the hatred that is out there right now, specifically for the Black trans community. And I mean, how powerful are these texts? And I don't think most people are taught them. And yet they're core to many of our faith traditions.
Yeah. Well, when I saw the gathering in Brooklyn on was it Sunday or yesterday, that was led by Black trans women and was in support of Black trans women, and there were thousands and thousands of people in the park in Brooklyn, and I just thought of the grasshoppers, like what the strength in numbers coming together, the support for them was gorgeous.
Yeah, they said there were over 15,000 people at that protest yesterday.
Wow, amazing. Wow, how wonderful. Tracy, you wanted to?
I just was gonna share, if you liked the way the material that Lisa put up on the screen, it's from a free, amazing resource called Safaria. And you can download it. It has the entire everything Jewish on it. It has,
so many, so many texts available in English and Hebrew, commentaries on those texts. And the way I put it on the screen, that's a worksheet that you can do right on their website and put it together like that. No more, cutting and pasting, Xeroxing and cutting and pasting. It was, it's just a really, thank you for that reminder, Tracy. Safaria.
When you read a chapter, or when you just read in Torah, it'll take a paragraph, it'll do the paragraph in Hebrew, and then it'll do the paragraph in English. So you don't have to go like looking all over.
Yeah, it's really wonderful. It's a great resource, So I know we're closing in on the end of our time here, and I just want to just offer a few more thoughts, and maybe this a little bit, Rabbi Resnick, what you were asking for a little bit anyway. At one point in this week's Torah portion, when God is praising those two optimistic scouts, Caleb and Joshua, the two that God saves, the two that God praises, the two that come back and say, yeah, all that stuff is there and we can do this. We can do this, people. God says that Caleb has been imbued with Ruach Acheret, a different spirit, Ruach Acheret. And what is that different spirit? Is it optimism? Is it the ability not to see oneself as a grasshopper by themselves? Is it the ability to see what's possible? Is it faith in God? Is it the ability not to see yourself as a grasshopper or to assume that others think you're insignificant? There's a midrash that when the Israelites say that that the Israelites, or that the scouts came back and they said, we looked like grasshoppers to ourselves, and so we must have looked to them. God's reply is, I don't care how you look to yourself, but how do you know how I made you look to them? Perhaps I made you look to them like angels. And I just love that midrash and the spin that that midrash writer put on it. So I want to leave you today with an invitation to do what we've been doing together this afternoon, trying to look at people different from us or maybe very like us from a place of optimism and interest, and most especially appreciation of differences, a willingness to consider different possibilities without responding from a place of fear because of difference or because of uncertainty, but with Ruach Acheret, a different spirit, like Caleb, who saw the same things and the same people that others saw, but saw good where others saw bad, and felt optimistic where others feared the worst. Can we find the Ruach Acheret, the different spirit, in ourselves? And can we use it to find and appreciate the Ruach Acheret, the different spirit in everyone?
Woo! Thank you so much, Rabbi Edwards. That is beautiful. A beautiful
Nice.
start for us.
Yasher koach, yasher kochech.
Yasher koach. Thank you.
Thank you. So when we end our Torah study at BCC, when I've been studying with people, we just read just the verses from Kaddish D'Rabbanan that are about studying and students. May I? For Israel and her sages, for their pupils and all pupils of their pupils. That's pupils, students, but it's nice to think about eyes too. And for all who occupy themselves with Torah, whether in this place or any other place, may God grant them and you abundant peace and grace and love and mercy and long life and ample sustenance and saving acts, all flowing from divine abundance and the worlds beyond. Say, amen. Thank you all. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you
Toda
so
Rabbi, Rabbi, Toda Rabbi.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Edwards. Thank you, all of you, for being with us tonight. Just so you know, we have more learning and many more Pride happenings. All are welcome. Please feel free to join us. Next week on the 23rd, we'll be learning together with Neil Spears, who is currently the executive director of the JCC in Silver Lake and also a JQ board member. We will be celebrating Pride Shabbat on the 26th. This Wednesday evening, if you have small children or you just love a good story, we'll be doing story time not only with me, but also with the owner of one of our local children's bookstores, who will be reading stories of pride. So please join us, be with us. We are so grateful, as always, to have you, Rabbi Lisa Edwards. I feel like you're a part of our family, and Tracy and Cantor Parat and all of you who joined us. Always amazing to see your beautiful faces. You are all welcome here, and thank you for being a part of this incredible program and helping make it happen and teaching us about a Ruach Acheret. May we all be those examples as we go forth in this world this evening.